Hello friends, today we're going to talk about self-trust. And so our mission here has two parts. The first thing is to define what is meant by self-trust. So what does it mean to trust yourself? And once that's done, we're going to talk about whether or not it's a good idea to do that. Should you do it? Should you trust yourself? Is it safe? Is it smart? Is it dangerous? Should you doubt yourself a little bit? Is there any such thing as like healthy self-doubt? Maybe. We're going to figure that out. And then when that's done, you'll be able to just come away from this talk knowing exactly how much to trust yourself. And you'll have answers to questions such as the following. So, should you trust yourself to make the right decision? Should you trust yourself to do a good job of something if you're about to start something? To take a big, scary, risky action that you're considering taking? What about trusting yourself to know what to do? In a broad sense, like to trust yourself that you know how to live your own life and you don't need to consult somebody else about how to live it. So just imagine the freedom that would be available for you if you could just jump into this self-trust. Because I have this theory about you. I haven't taken a formal survey, but this is just what I think to be true. Tell me if I'm right, leave a comment if I'm correct. That suppose we do all the math and we figure it all out and we square it away and it's all done and we figure out, yes, it is safe and correct and good for you to trust yourself completely in life. My assumption is that you know how to do that. Like you can do it. As long as you know it's safe, you know how to trust yourself and move into that state. And not only do you know how to do it, but it would feel good. Like you feel attracted to it. Like I bet you want to hear that it's safe to trust yourself. And once the coast is clear and you get that green light, then you would be very happy and excited to finally trust yourself. And why? Because it would mean that everything that goes into the constant attempts to control and overthink and doubt yourself and make sure and no, you wouldn't have to do that anymore. Like all the brain power that goes towards that, it would just be done and you could just lock in. Like you could just be congruent and unidirectional. And how exciting does that sound? So I'm not going to give away what happens, but I sure hope that when we're done, we come away with the position, with the belief that it is safe to trust ourselves. I guess we're going to have to find out. So let's dive in. Starting with introductions. Hello, if we never met, my name is Brent. I coach people to become productive and self-actualized. My singular message for you is that you, my friend, are meant for more. You're meant for more. So if you're interested in the one-on-one work that I offer, check out the links in the description and I'll take care of you from there. Good. Trust as opposed to control. So we need to discuss these two opposites. These are opposites. They are your Clark Kent and Superman. If one of them is in the building, the other is not in the building, and we never figure out why. So if something is inside of our control, then it means that trust is not required. If I'm going to move my hand, I just move it. I don't need to trust that I will move my hand. That doesn't make sense. If I asked you, do you trust yourself to move your hand? You'd say, what the hell are you talking about? Doesn't make sense. If it's in your control, no trust is required. But the opposite is the case as well. If something is outside of your control, then trust is required. For example, the sun coming up in the morning. You just have to trust that it's going to come up. You have no other choice. Now, the problem when it comes to control is that us as people with egos do not like being out of control. To be out of control makes us a little bit nervous. We prefer to be as much in control as we possibly can. And so that's fine, except when we start to brush up against things that are actually out of our control, over which we have no domain, and we try to control anyway. And so when that happens, then we start to enter into controlling type behaviors. And I'll give you a handful of examples. One of them is overthinking. This is the classic quintessential form of the illusion of control. So it's not actual control, it's an illusion. So when we overthink, we're just considering all the different ways it could play out, all of the different things that could happen, all of the ways of interpreting what did happen, and we accumulate this big bag of data and information that we use to feel like we're in control, except we're not. We just have information, right? Another one is being indecisive. You're not sure whether to go left or right, and you think, well, maybe I should go left, maybe I should go right. And then you come up with a pros and cons list and more lists, and you have more information, and you stay in this indecisive place where technically in an indecisive place, you have two options, which feels like control. It's like, oh, because I could go this way or that way, but it's the opposite of action, of actually doing something. Worrying, fretting, searching for options, crunching data. So just constantly crunching data. If then trees, if I do this and this happens, then maybe I'll do that. But then if something happens over there, then maybe I'll do that. And so you're just bogged down with all this information. You will see a theme of accumulating information as a way of convincing yourselves that we are in control. Negativity and reactivity. This is another form of control, of false control, where if something happens and it pisses us off and we're upset and we go, gosh darn it, that shouldn't have happened. I cannot stand by while this thing happens. And we move into a reactive place where we start mobilizing to rectify this thing that should not be. This is a form of control. The held negativity is control, because we believe that sustaining this negative energy field in our bodies is producing some sort of effect. We feel like it's helping motivate us, for example, or it's helping us, it's actually influencing the events of the world to make it go back to how it's supposed to be. Like it's crazy when I put it this way, but that's what a lot of us actually believe when we sustain a negative energy field in our bodies. That's the purpose of negativity. So another form of false control is what we can call having something to show for it. So let's say you work all day on something, and at the end of the day, that thing that you're trying to do, it fails. So it kind of feels like the whole day is wasted. Like imagine you're an athlete and you work really, really hard to win this game for the fans and for your team and for your teammates, but you fail in the end. So if you come off of the court at the very end of the day and you're not totally exhausted, then what that means is that you didn't leave it all out on the court. It means you didn't expend all of your energy. And so therefore, expending all of your energy and completely exhausting yourself becomes sort of a gesture toward success. It's, in quotes, what you have to show for it. And so this is our form of control, where it's like, if we failed at the thing, as long as we have something to show for our efforts, then that's sort of a consolation prize of some kind. And this is a way of controlling the situation. So that's trust versus control. And so now something else also to establish is that when we talk about trust, it's not like trusting something automatically is a good idea. Like, for example, if I said, I trust that the sun will not rise in the morning, that would be misplaced trust. If you have a friend who has let you down 1,000,000 times and you trust them again, that is also misplaced trust. So there are correct and incorrect places to put your trust in. Okay. Now, next, we're going to talk about what self-trust doesn't mean. And we have to do it in this order, because I know you might be wondering, okay, Brent, get to the positive definition. Like, what exactly is self-trust? But we have to do it this way. We have to hack away at everything that's false so that we see what we're left with at the very end. Nevertheless, we're almost there. Self-trust doesn't mean that you will get something right that you usually get wrong. Like if you are trying to make shots on the basketball net from half court and you like always miss, or you get like 1 out of 10 in, then it would be incorrect to trust that this one is going to go in the net. Self-trust doesn't mean that your belief system or your point of view is correct. So if you hold belief system, like a religious one, like Christian, Jewish, Muslim, or a political belief system, left, right, Marxist, libertarian, communist, whatever, just because you hold a belief system doesn't mean that it's correct. And so it would be incorrect. Self-trust doesn't mean just trusting what you believe. Self-trust doesn't mean that you will be famous, rich, and successful one day necessarily. Self-trust doesn't mean that you can do whatever you want and you'll still evolve and you'll still actualize your potential. And then finally, self-trust doesn't mean that anything. Self-trust doesn't mean that blank, and whatever you put in the blank is not necessarily true. That's not what self-trust refers to when we're talking about self-trust. So now we can get to the business of talking about what self-trust is. Self-trust is a state of being. It is a mental position that you're either in or not in. If self-trust could speak, it would say the following things. It would say, I'm doing this right. It would say, I trust that I'm living correctly, that I'm operating correctly. It would say, I know everything that I need to know right now. It would say, I have an intuition that I can trust. It would say, there's nothing to be afraid of. It is the trust in Logos. So even though trust would say these things, I want you to focus a little bit more on what we were discussing at the beginning of this video, where I said to you, can you enter self-trust right now? Like if you wanted to, if you felt safe to do it, could you do it right now? Again, it's not a trust that something is the case. It is simply an absence of being separate from yourself, of hovering over your life, but being in it. To be in it is to trust that you are exactly where you need to be and that things will show up on time. Things will show up when they need to show up. And I'm going to elaborate on this. But first we need to talk about Logos, because Logos actually comes into play here. And the reason why it comes into play is because this concept of self-trust is coming off of some of my reading lately in Marcus Aurelius's Meditations, and a little bit of an introduction to the philosophy of Stoicism. It's been very interesting. Stoicism is based, it is centered on, assuming I understand correctly, Logos. Logos refers to logic, to rationality, and it's sometimes used to refer to a logical, rational line of thinking, or a logical, rational construction of an argument or a belief system, say, where it's like if A equals B and B equals C, then A equals C. We can refer to that as logic or Logos. But Logos also refers to an underlying rationality that undergirds the universe. It could be likened to God, it could refer to God, but it's more of an aspect of God or an approach to God. It's also, I find, similar to the concept of the Tao, Lao Tzu's Tao Te Ching, where in both the case of Stoicism and Taoism, what they share in common is a sense that there's an underlying unfolding structure of the universe of which we are a part, that we can be aware of and that we can align with, and that we can either resist and trust, either we can resist and not trust, or that we can trust. And that ultimately, this Logos is something that we are an aspect of. It is Logos that brought us here, that delivered us here. It is Logos that supports our existence right now. And so to trust in ourselves, to be in a state of self-trust, is to trust that underlying rationality that delivered us here. I want you to notice as we talk about this, what it tugs on in you as we speak. Because what I notice in myself, again, is that there is a sort of forbidden attraction to it, where I want to be reassured that it's safe to trust in logos, to trust in the Tao, to trust in myself. But I don't know that it's safe. Or I want, so pay attention to that as we go. And I guess the last thing to say about that before we move on is that you are an aspect of logos, but you are logos. And so to trust yourself is to trust logos. And again, it's not to trust that things will work out the way I want them to, or that bad things won't happen. Do you see what I mean? It's not to trust that something good will happen or to trust that something bad won't happen, but to trust logos. And you might think, okay, well, that kind of sounds like not so nice. And it doesn't sound safe at all. If you're just saying, Brent, well, either something good will happen or something bad will happen, why should I do that? But now, let's look back at what it is that we're considering, because what else is there to go back to if not to trust in yourself, to trust in logos? Are you making an argument to stay in a place of control? Because as we were just examining a moment ago, it's false control. To hold yourself in self-doubt, to not believe yourself, to not trust yourself, to have an intuitive hit. This is what I need to do. This is where I need to go. This is the appropriate move for me. To not trust that is to stay in false control. It's to stay in an environment that is known as opposed to unknown. But the environment that is known is not necessarily so nice. There's nothing heavenly about it. The only benefit to it is that you know it. This can show up in all sorts of different ways. For example, over the last few days, I've been getting these very powerful hits to join the local Tai Chi gym. There's a place in my town that teaches Tai Chi. And I've always been attracted to it. And lately, I've been really wanting to go. And so I looked up a few times, okay, and I haven't quite pulled the trigger on it yet. And it's interesting because it's not like, say, a money thing or even necessarily a scheduling thing. There's nothing preventing me from going except a little speed bump that I need to overcome, which is the simple fact that I've never done it before. I have no memory of having done it, and it just feels uncomfortable enough that another day keeps passing by and I haven't done it. Oh, there goes another day and I didn't do it. It just gets swept under the rug. It just gets forgotten. So I'm pointing this out as an example that it's not necessarily about making these big, massive choices. Oftentimes, logos speaks to us something for us to do, and it's just a matter of getting your train off of one track and onto a new one. And when logos speaks to us, it speaks to us in the form of appropriateness. In fact, we could use a term for it almost like wholesome attraction. Wholesome attraction, which is different from attraction to a chocolate. It's when you feel like, if I were to ask you one of my very favorite coaching questions, which is, what's something that you might start doing that if you were to do it, it would just clearly be a good thing. It would clearly, we're not going to over philosophize about it. It just clearly would be to your benefit. What's that one thing? You can ask that to yourself every time and that thing shows up. And I could follow up with another question where I say, imagine you did this and I came back to you to ask you, like, how much enjoyment did you get out of 10? 10 being the most enjoyment. What number would you put on it? Not having done it yet, what would you assume? And the answer is a minimum of 7. It's usually 8, sometimes 9. You just know that it's the appropriate move for you. That's the voice of logos. That's the voice of intuition. So, in order to understand what it means to be in a state of self-trust, you need to cooperate with me and not over-philosophize about it. Because there is something in you that will listen to what I'm saying and it would pretend to not understand. It would prefer to not know what it is, and it would prefer not to go into it because it's a very nude, naked state. It's a state of interfacing with the unknown, constantly interfacing with the unknown. It resists definition, and yet you know exactly what it is to move into a state of self-trust. The ego wants guarantees about what happens when you trust yourself. If I don't know that something good is going to happen, and if I don't know that something bad is not going to happen, then what do I know? What do I get if I trust myself and move into this new thing? Well, here's what you get. You move out of endless loops of misery. Because here's what happens. Let's just say there's something that you are considering doing, but every time it comes time to do it, you chicken out. Notice the cyclical nature of it. Notice how you keep arriving at the point of almost doing it and then not doing it. And then it goes away for a little bit and then it comes back. Notice how the attraction doesn't go away. Is it ever going to go away? Probably not. So you can either stay in this room that is miserable, or you can go out the door into something new. The promise that's given to you when you trust yourself and you trust your intuition and you trust logos is that the wheel will turn in a new way. You will move on to the next thing. I should say the gears will turn. The gears of logos will turn. You'll move into the next thing, the new chapter, something fresh. At least something new will happen. In the state of radical self-trust, part of that trust includes that you will become aware of something when you need to be aware of it. The whole idea behind illusory control is trying to be aware of everything right now. Because you don't want to be blindsided. You don't want to be caught unaware. You want to be ready for all of the different outcomes. But when you operate from self-trust, part of that trust is trusting in the natural course correction, your ability to course correct. If you're veering off too much on one side of the lane, you'll enter the red zone and you'll know it. And then you come back to center. What a lot of us do is that if we veer too far in one direction and things start going awry, we freak out and then overcorrect and go in the other area. But then we're going too hard in the other area that we bounce back to the other one. And so we zigzag. Imagine like a bowling lane, but with bumpers, and the bowling ball is just going left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right. In a state of radical self-trust, if you get into the red zone where you veered too far in one extreme that's no longer helpful, there is immediate forgiveness. There's immediate understanding. The slate is immediately wiped clean. We're not mad at ourselves. We're not in negativity about it. We're not in reactivity. We just course correct. We come back to center. We add the thing that's necessary. Like an example would be like in earlier years, I would make these YouTube videos and I would go back and forth between certain extremes where sometimes these videos would be really well planned, like down to the word. And I wouldn't really like that. So then I'd do sort of an extemporaneous, as it comes to my mind kind of video. And I wouldn't really be happy with that either. And so I would bounce back. And so only now am I realizing that you just find center. You just correct a little bit. You just adjust as you go to find the sweet spot. And this also applies because part of what has challenged me personally is that I'm exposed to so many different philosophies and I can't get into just one. There's so many, like there's the Matt Kahn heart-centered way of approaching. There's the Eckhart Tolle surrender present moment way of approaching. There's the Stoic way of approaching. There's a philosopher way of approaching. And all of them seem to contrast in different ways. And I bounce back and forth between them all. And it's the bouncing back and forth that's killing me. It's better just to course correct. Just find the center. Just keep incorporating little bits here and there. To enter radical self-trust, don't betray your body. So if you're doing something and you feel a sense of exasperation, like a classic one is when you leave the house and you just don't know for sure that you turned off the stove. You know that feeling? And it kind of bugs you and it's like, oh my God, and it feels like the stakes are so high that I better just like turn around, go back 45 minutes just to make sure the house isn't on fire. But then you do that every time and the stove's never on. At a certain point, you have to pay attention to this sense of exasperation in your body. Like, oh God, this is so dumb. I can't believe I'm about to do this. And trust that the body knows. Trust in the wisdom of the body over the fear in the mind. This is what self-trust is like. And then another one is to look at your history and all of your memories and all of your mistakes and errors that have brought you here. And everywhere there's guilt and shame and wrongness about what you've done that's brought you here, to see all of that as logos that brought you here, as necessary. For had you not done these things, you would not know not to do them. That what life has brought you, and this is from Marcus Aurelius more or less directly, what life has brought you is for you. Where you are now is where you are supposed to be. There's no difference between where you are now and what has happened and how the universe ought to be. And it's through dropping all of these ideas that you move into self-trust. Because those ideas of wrongness are false control. To see something as wrong is to feel like you're in control because you think to yourself, well, at least I have an idea of how things are supposed to be. No. You have no idea how things are supposed to be. You have no idea what Logos has in mind for you. Your choice is to trust it or not, to fight against it or flow with it. If you fight against it, you'll stay in the known. You'll stay where you are. You'll continue moving in these loops, and that's fine. It's fine. But you'll get tired of it, probably. And eventually you'll arrive at a point where I may as well go into the unknown. Anything other than this would do. Anything other than this. So you move through the door. You move through the door. And so you move through the door to see what you get. Trusting that you won't be given anything you can't deal with. Trusting that there's nothing to be scared of. There's no situation that you can enter that will be more than you, that will be bigger than you. Trusting that you can meet however the moment presents itself to you. Trusting that whatever shows up in your awareness will show up on time. And this isn't at the expense of doing smart things like buckling up your seatbelt or planning for the future, planning for your retirement. All that's there too, but trusting that you'll know when is the correct moment to do these things. So, is it safe to trust yourself? It depends on how you define safety. I'm sorry, I don't mean to equivocate here, but it does depend on how you define safety. Is safety really what you need? Would an infinite being require assurances of safety? Is that what you need? Or instead, would it suffice to know that you know how to keep yourself safe? You know how to respond. You're not here to be safe. You're here to surrender to divine logos. You're here to follow it. You're here to see where it leads. And ultimately, to trust it, to trust the thing that brought you here. It brought you here after all. Only under its auspices do you exist to begin with. Is the divine logos not benevolent? Does it not deserve your trust? Is it not yet trustworthy? Leave a comment to let me know. Please hit like while you're at it. Check out the links below for my one-on-one practice if you're interested. I look forward to talking to you again.